Behind the Bulb is a deep dive into the ideas and industries of our world. Have you ever looked at a structure and asked, whatever happened to the people that built this? What motivated those people to wake up in the morning and head off to work? No matter the occupation, these are real questions. Put simply, why do we do what we do? This season, we focus on the building industry. We know the basic principles of how things are built, but we often don't know the narratives of the people involved in building them. Lend us your ears as we unfold their journey. Whether you are a part of the building industry or not, we think you will enjoy listening to these inspiring stories. Welcome to Behind the Bulb. I'm Brendan McCartney.
And I'm James Young.
This week we have Alyssa Weber. She currently resides in Colorado, and we talk about the balance between work and life. And sustainability. She used to go on hikes with her family as a young child, and this had an impact on how she practices sustainability today. At one point, she wanted to be a snowboarder. When she was in college, she thought about being a journalist, but she ended up in engineering. How did this all happen? We think you'll enjoy listening to Alyssa.
Let's roll.
We're elated to have a snowboarder, and this is as social media reads, snowboarder, sustainability nut, engineer, obsessed traveler, enthusiast of, well, it seems like all things. What we really want to know, Alyssa, what was the last concert you went to?
Oh, goodness. The last concert I went to, wow, I have to think so far back thanks to quarantine and COVID. Let's see. You know, I'm having a little bit of a hard time thinking about what the exact last one was, but the one that really sticks out in my mind was Tribe Called Quest at Red Rock Amphitheater here in Colorado.
Tribe Called Quest. That's a great band right there.
Yeah, it was awesome. We had an opportunity to see them on like a farewell tour, and it was really cool. Any show at Red Rocks is always awesome also.
That wasn't with the late Fife Dog, was it? Was he there? Was this after his passing?
No, he wasn't there. It was, yeah, they kind of had like it was really cool though. They had a microphone stand, you know, right in the center of the stage with a spotlight on it, kind of as a tribute throughout the whole show. So it was cool.
Yeah. That's cool.
Your taste in rap music, was there a place that it started growing up?
You know, I don't know exactly where it started, but I am from New York, from upstate New York, actually. And I was just such a 90s hip hop R&B kid. Like I just loved it. And I still listen to quite a bit of hip hop today, along with a lot of other things as well.
It seems like you're the kind of person who's able to stay in the present moment. I mean, it seems to be a challenge, but would you agree with that statement?
You know, I certainly try my best to stay in the present moment. I do have, I try to have a mindfulness practice, you know, do some meditation type stuff and things like that to help keep me on track. Because if I don't, you know, sometimes I do tend to be a little bit of a worrier, thinking about the future, kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I would say that I do my best to stay in the present moment and really just enjoy life and take things, kind of roll with the punches and take things as they come, which I think is an important quality for a manufacturer's rep to have, for sure. Going with the flow. So, yeah.
Yeah, every day brings something new, and then you know, how do you fit in leisure time, you know, in your day when your day could easily be a 24-hour cycle, right? But you got to fit the leisure time in. Do you find that you're able to fit leisure in?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good question because, you know, as someone who is in, you know, kind of a sales role and in that representative role, it's, you know, I have my cell phone on me all the time. I'm always available. I'm, you know, taking calls from clients late at night when they're working on deadlines and they have questions. So it can be really challenging to set boundaries. I'm definitely the type of person who kind of lives and dies by my calendar. So unfortunately, it's like I schedule my leisure time in a lot of the time, you know, or my exercise or, you know, lunch plans with my husband or friends or, you know, evening plans. I I try to be really good about blocking off that time on my calendar and setting those boundaries and, letting people know that I'm not available for personal reasons or otherwise during those times and trying to stick with it as best I can. So yeah, I think I do a decent job. I've gotten better at it as I've gotten later in my career, for sure.
You mentioned manufacturer's representative. So do you mind explaining what a manufacturer's representative is in construction and then specifically for lighting?
Yeah, absolutely. So a manufacturer's representative is a company that will have essentially what we call a line card. So they sign contracts, typically they're exclusive contracts within a specific territory of the country with manufacturers who, manufacture a product and have factories both in the U.S. or internationally. And we create these agreements with these manufacturers to essentially represent them here locally in our market. So our market is Colorado and Southern Wyoming. So we have sort of that list of manufacturers that we represent, and it's our job to be experts on those products. So in the lighting world, my company represents both light fixtures and lighting controls. I am specific to lighting controls. So what I do is essentially have expertise on my lighting control manufacturers, all of the kind of parts and pieces and ins and outs of how a lighting control or building automation system goes together, what those capabilities are, how they get programmed, all that kind of stuff. And I can help my customers on the specification side with designing those systems, making sure everything is accounted for and designed so that it will work for their sequence of operation and their expectations. And then also, we manage the process from start to finish. So we have in-house engineers who do what we call shop drawings. And, those are essentially drawings that the contractor can build off of and install off of, very detailed engineered drawings. We have people who do project management, coordination of, shipping products, getting it to the construction site, making sure that it's correct. And then at the end of the project, we also have programmers who help to basically go out and implement software in the building to make the system function and test the system. Make sure that when you walk in a room and you hit the on button, the lights turn on. Or lots of other much more complicated things.
Right. We were speaking to one of our other guests, and he spoke about the satisfaction that comes with just the lighting, specifically because there's a known moment when you hit the switch and the lights go on, and you do this and they dim, and you hit scene B and B happens. It's gratifying to see it functions. Right. The lights are doing what they're supposed to do. Meanwhile, other trades don't always, they don't necessarily get that type of satisfaction, right? We're going to flush all the toilets at the same time. I'm sure, I'm sure that they have that's incredible work in itself as well, right? And, but for lighting specifically, they have this satisfaction that's pretty crucial. But, so manufacturer's representative, now, prior to what you're doing today, what was your previous capacity?
So I started out my career in electrical engineering. I dabbled a little bit in lighting design, and I decided that I kind of liked the more technical aspects, so I leaned more towards electrical engineering at the beginning of my career. So I had worked for a couple companies doing electrical engineering consulting, designing the electrical infrastructure and whatnot. And in one of those roles, I ended up basically working on a pretty complex lighting project. This was actually, it must have been about 7 years ago now, 6 years ago. I designed my first ever fully LED lighting project, which is kind of crazy to think about now because everything is LED these days. But yeah, so that project ended up being really complicated on the lighting control side. The owner wanted a really sophisticated lighting control system with integration to other building systems and all sorts of really cool stuff that they wanted to do on this campus. so I got into the details of that lighting control project and just kind of was, I don't know, enamored with the complication of it, or like the complexity of it, but then also really just the simplicity at the end result of turning the light on, turning the light off, dimming it up and down. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the back end to make that happen. But I was really just, I just totally loved that project and had a really great experience, and decided that I wanted to kind of specialize and focus more on one particular discipline within the electrical world, and I wanted that to be lighting control. So
yeah, and
really specific.
It's interesting. Because I became aware of what the work you were doing in Colorado when there was a manufacturer held a national conference in Las Vegas, and the work that you were doing was being put into a position of saying, hey, this works. What they're doing in Colorado works, and these are some of the techniques that they're using. What's interesting is you were presenting to an audience of manufacturer representatives of, hey, this is a way to approach controls in your respective market. Prior to you becoming a manufacturer's representative, did you feel that what you would like to provide to the construction community was missing, and that the manufacturer's representative was the outlet by which you'd be able to bring to fruition some of the techniques that you were using in this project that you're referencing?
I wouldn't necessarily say it was totally missing from our market. I mean, we definitely have some strong competitors. I'll admit it. They're, got a lot of respect for the people in our market who are fighting the good fight out there, lighting controls. But I will say, I do think that based on my experience and coming from the electrical engineering world, I definitely was able to provide maybe a little bit different of a perspective on it. Really understanding the needs of the clients, of the engineers and architects and owners, and what they're looking for, what they're asking for, and the challenges that they face on a daily basis. I think I really had that. I had that very personal experience, working on that side of the industry. So bringing that over into the manufacturer's representative role, I feel like I was able to potentially provide a little bit more value or more services in some cases that, just based on my experience on the other side.
Has there been a moment, over the past couple of years where you were commissioning or troubleshooting well past working hours or just at an odd hour, and you thought to yourself, what, man, I didn't think I was going to be here, right? In high school or college, has that happened to you? Where has that happened to you? And
interestingly, I had a little bit of a preview of some of that when I was working at ME Engineers, really large, kind of high profile company, works on a lot of stadiums and arenas and just really, really cool projects. It was awesome experience working there. But when I first, so I'm going to go back a little bit before I answer your question, I guess. When I first started working there, I got hired, and, they were onboarding some projects, and they were kind of, figuring out where they could fit me in, and, start getting me some workload. And one of the things that I actually helped to do was sort of closeout process for a baseball stadium in Florida. And they flew me out there, and they told me that, your job is to handle the aiming of the lights. Some of that was actually the sports lighting in the stadium. Some of it was, around the concourse and in the clubs and spaces like that. And of course, aiming can't be done during the day, right? You have to be able to see the lights in order to aim them. So we were up, basically started at sunset and went until sunrise, doing that aiming process. And that was one of the first experiences I had. It's probably, I think I was like 24 years old at that time. And, I was like really energized by it. I was like, wow, this is so cool, getting to dial in this final product. So I kind of got a little bit of a sneak peek of those late nights in my experience doing that. But yes, now I spend tons of late nights on job sites. Specifically, a lot of my work that ends up being after hours or later, long days, are typically when I'm on a construction site and I'm testing the systems. I'm, working with a lighting designer or an architect to help them set scenes and presets for the building, really dial in the dim levels of a building so that it creates the overall mood and feel that they envisioned of the project at the very beginning. So yeah, I definitely spend a lot of late nights doing that kind of stuff. And sometimes it is really challenging, and you kind of get a little sick of it, especially if it happens night after night or, pretty consistently. But, that being said, here and there, like having a late night on a job site to get to dial in the final product, I find that extremely rewarding and really fun to do, actually. So.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny you mentioned a ballpark. The reason why we started 5 minutes late on this is because I was coming from a ballpark and some lighting issues. So
nice.
I hope that all the lights in Florida were working by the time you left, right?
Yeah, that's always the stressful part is are the lights turning on?
Yeah.
Step one.
Correct me if I'm wrong. When you were in college, and then you thought about the things in the industries you were going to end up in, or the companies you were going to end up in, the places you would go. When you were there at the ballpark, in some ways, was it I didn't think this was going to be it, but I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad this is the way it's working.
In some ways, I feel like I kind of sort of tumbled into lighting and electrical and the construction industry. I wasn't really the type of person who started out college knowing that I wanted to do this and really definitively deciding that this is what I was going to do. It was kind of a series of dominoes that all fell and sort of just ended up here. But I think getting to work on exciting projects and having a really good variety in my day and in my weeks and working on different things, really getting to kind of dive into the details of lots of different projects with different requirements. I find it extremely challenging, and for that reason, I'm very engaged and feel very rewarded, by that process. So I definitely did not know that this is what I wanted to do when I started college. But over time, it's that saying wherever you go, there you are. I've always liked being challenged. I've always liked taking on lots of responsibility. Really helping to fill in the gaps that might exist on a project team or on a project. That's always been my style and kind of what I do. So it kind of makes sense when I look back where I landed, but it definitely wasn't what I had originally planned. So.
What was your original plan?
I actually started out college. I wanted to work for a snowboard magazine. That was my goal. I wanted to be a
Action
writer.
sports.
Yeah. I was really interested in journalism, actually. Communications, writing. I actually started out college as a business and communications major, and I did that for a whole year, and kind of realized that I was a little bit bored doing it. I wasn't feeling super challenged by the coursework. I wasn't feeling super inspired by the prospects and whatnot looking into the future. And I was kind of like, I'm pretty good at math and science. I really like math and science. Maybe I'll transfer to the engineering school. So I transferred to the engineering school, and I ended up with my advisor in the engineering school that I was assigned to was Bob Davis. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's kind of a legend in the lighting industry.
Gotta look him up.
Yeah, he's awesome. So he was a teacher. He was a professor at CU Boulder for a really long time. Him and David DeLaura really just made this amazing architectural illumination engineering program. So I ended up with Bob Davis as my advisor, and was just really inspired by meeting with him and talking with him, and just thought that, the creative aspects of architectural engineering and lighting were so cool. So then I decided to go into architectural engineering, decided to focus on lighting, and yeah, I guess somewhat, sort of the rest is history. But yeah, it was a very meandering path that got me here for sure.
I have a question. How do you move sustainability forward and not impede human evolution? It's a tough
How do you
question.
move
Yes.
sustainability forward and not impede human evolution? Is that the question?
And it might be a flawed question, right? Because I'm tying the two together. I'm saying, unfortunately, and I'm not saying I agree with this or disagree with this, but more, I'm just curious. We instill sustainability, as we practice sustainability actions, are we potentially impeding human progression?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that could be true. On the spot, it makes me want to go and read books about that or something and come back and answer your question.
I think you may have answered it. We read an old tweet from you, and we did, and it stated regarding a tram project in the Grand Canyon. I believe may have been proposed, and you said wrong place, wrong project, which was well put, because you weren't saying no trams should be built anywhere. You were saying just not there. And I thought that was a thought. It was a thoughtful tweet, right? You weren't just trying to denounce the entire the project. But so that there's you mentioned mindfulness in the beginning about being able to maintain presence. There's also, it seems that you are practicing mindfulness when it comes to sustainability as well.
I guess it's a little bit of a juxtaposition, if you will, of I work in the construction industry. We're building things, we're expanding, we're developing land, or, building, high rises or whatever it may be. But then I also have sort of that passion for sustainability. So it certainly is a conflicting thing. I think that developing and building while also trying to be mindful of our impact on the environment and our surroundings, and the impact that we might have on the world as a result of that development, I think is really important to keep in mind. I certainly not saying no development. Of course, the most sustainable thing we could do is just not build anything new. That's also not realistic and not practical. Because I have a passion for sustainability, but I'm also a very practical person, and we have ever growing population, and people need places to live and need places to work, and we need to provide those spaces for them in as healthy of a way as we can, in my opinion. I think that it is a balance, right, of trying to do things as responsibly as we can, but also meet the needs of our citizens and our building occupants and whatnot. It's interesting. I'm not super active on Twitter anymore, but I remember that I was very upset about they were talking about building a tram right down to the confluence of the Colorado River and the lower Colorado. And I went on a whitewater rafting trip in the Grand Canyon, 3-week private trip with a group of friends. We rode the boats ourselves. We did everything ourselves, no guides or anything. So the Grand Canyon is a very special place for me personally, because it just has this really remote aspect of it, just true adventure, and it's a really, really beautiful place. And while I would certainly love for people to access it and see it and appreciate it, I think that there's there's some limits to that and some boundaries that need to be set for access to those types of remote wild spaces, in my opinion.
When I was 9 years old, my mother packed my brother and I plus a bunch of stuff in a van, and we did a 6-week road trip to the West Coast, to Oregon, where her brother lived, and then we did 3 weeks out, and then we did 3 weeks back. And we stopped at all national parks along the way. So we stopped at Badlands, we stopped at Glacier National Park, we stopped at Grand Tetons, Olympia, and numerous others. But we stopped at Grand Teton, and we stayed at a hostel there, which I didn't know what a hostel was when I was 9 years old, but I found out very quick after one night what a hostel was.
It's a hostile environment.
Yeah. But then there's a tram in the Grand Teton at Jackson Hole for Rendezvous Mountain that takes you up to the top of Rendezvous Mountain. You can take it.
There.
You've been there, right?
Yeah, well, I've seen Jackson. Are you talking about the tram that goes from the base of Jackson up? Yep, definitely.
Yep, and I was like 9 years old, and I believe the Rendezvous Mountain is about 10,000 feet. It's pretty high up there, and this tram takes you up there, and I was 9, and there's no way I would ever end up that high in that elevation at that age, perhaps, so I was able to experience the elevation by way of the tram. Now, if you take me today, and before that tram was built, I'd probably argue, we don't need a tram. You just wait till the person's old enough so they can go up and experience it. Much like with the zoo, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the zoo, you have these animals captive. However, you now can educate. I think that sustainability is often tied to this concept of being able to educate younger people. You now potentially give access to individuals who can become people practicing sustainability. So, Alyssa, growing up, was it your interactions with the environment that led to you having a passion for sustainability? Or was it something that within your family was practiced and talked about because you went on hikes as a family and things like that?
Absolutely. So, my parents were also, they raised us very outdoorsy from a young age. Most of our families experienced camping or getting a cabin in the Adirondack Mountains of New York, doing a lot of hiking and fishing and, just generally being outdoors. And, I definitely think that sort of planted that seed for me in just really feeling at home outdoors and loving it outdoors and, really needing it, honestly. And, now that I'm older, when I'm able to go out into the backcountry, turn my phone off and really just be out there in nature, that's how I reset. That's how I don't burn out with the crazy work life. So yeah, I think it definitely planted a seed for me. Both of my parents they met in forestry school at Syracuse. And so they also had a background in, environmental type of industries. So I think it definitely is a little bit baked in to my DNA and also, my childhood experience as well, for sure.
It's beautiful because you're also reducing the carbon footprint by working within the lighting industry and instituting energy saving practices with your solution, with the lighting control solutions, as well as the lighting.
Yeah, trying to.
Where do you think that the electrical industry rates as far as the direction that it's going with sustainability?
Yeah, I think sustainability has been generally an interesting topic in our industry. When I was younger in consulting, it was all about LEED, LEED building, getting your LEED accreditation, getting buildings LEED certified. And I feel like, and I don't know if this is totally accurate for all markets, but at least here in Colorado, I feel like in some ways LEED hasn't been quite as on the front of of mind as it used to be. And I think a big reason for that is because of the energy code. The bare minimum requirements of energy codes are really being pushed hard by local governments and even on a national level, just with the IBC, the International Building Council. So I think, energy code is really kind of pushing the envelope on building performance and efficiency. And I know that a lot of jurisdictions have goals of, net zero by 2040 or whatever. It's different throughout the whole country. And I think that those energy codes are sort of the tool that they're using to try to achieve some of those sustainability goals as jurisdictions. So I think that things are definitely moving in the right direction. I think, if I don't know how the electrical industry would rank necessarily, but I think that the pushing of energy codes throughout the country is really sort of forcing the issue of designing these buildings in a more sustainable way. Now I have to say that there's a balance to that, because all of these energy code advancements that are being issued really drive up the cost of buildings and can actually make it very difficult for some owners and developers to build in certain areas. So, it's kind of a catch-22, because I'm definitely very supportive of the energy codes and getting more aggressive with sustainability and everything. But at the same time, want to make sure our industry stays healthy and, people remain employed and everything kind of keeps moving forward. So, there is kind of two sides to that coin. And I think there's a balance that we really need to find as an industry there.
Yeah. So we've talked about sustainability and where it's come from within your life and how you're practicing it to this day. But one other concept that is not often taught, but it's either passed on through family or a friend, or it's learned along the way through experience, is work ethic and motivation, things like that. Do you attribute your own work ethic to just who you are as a person, or there have been people along the way that have demonstrated high effort in their work, and they continue to help inspire you and motivate you to have a great work ethic yourself?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a little bit of both. I think that it's definitely part of my DNA, part of my personality to just, really want to work hard and stay motivated and stay inspired in what I'm doing. And, that's definitely been kind of a theme for me, and something that, traits that I've kind of had since I was really young. My parents have all sorts of funny stories of when I was little and the things I used to organize and stuff. And, it was this 9-year-old who's trying to organize a play with the neighborhood kids and put it on for charity at our church, what's going on? Actually, I was 9. That's wrong. I don't remember how old I was. But I just always have had that kind of that drive to, want to try to help organize and lead things, and just really, I've just always had that in my personality. But certainly along the way, I've had examples of people who have certainly inspired me, and kind of see the path forward of where I might want to go in my career and things like that. So it's definitely a little bit of both.
Yeah, and you mentioned some individuals during your collegiate years that inspired you in lighting and electrical engineering, and you're mentioning individuals who have inspired you for your work ethic. Is this it? You mentioned where you go in your career. have you filled per se? Have you filled your passion cup of sustainability in your current role? Are you saving enough energy in the solutions you put forth, or is there something larger at play where, they say, I remember meeting a man in Peru at a hostel when I was traveling in college with some friends. We were doing the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, and we were at a hostel.
That's awesome.
That was a fantastic memory, and we met a group of individuals who had been traveling for 2 years. And I still, to this day, I still question, is the concept of like those who are wandering are truly lost, right? And then there's the counter to that is like not all who wander are truly lost, right? That's like that Instagram phrase that everybody loves. But it makes me wonder: somebody who loves to travel, is it not enough right now, and there's something more at play for what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that as I've gotten older and kind of continued on in my career, some of the things that are more important for me in terms of ambition and where I want my life to go aren't necessarily career oriented, right? Like traveling and spending time in the outdoors and, new adventures outdoors and taking that time off to do those things and having the ability to, take the time off and the flexibility to do things like that are definitely extremely important to me. And so I think, when I think about looking forward into the future, it's definitely back to that kind of theme of balance of having a rewarding career that challenges me, that I have room for advancement and, I can be moving forward in my career, but also that I can unplug and take the time to travel and do other things. I certainly would love if I could sometime in the future take a longer trip and do something like those guys were doing, down South America. That sounds awesome. I've always wanted to do something like that. But it is also a balance. I don't know that I am the type of person who could truly just strictly travel for years. I feel like I do really like to have tasks and goals and, working towards completing projects and things like that. So, I think it's a little bit of both. And I definitely am, I do really love the work that I do now. I think going from electrical engineering, where your expertise is a little bit more broad, you have to design fire alarm systems and power systems and lighting systems and all these different things, to then transitioning to focusing on, basically trying to become an expert on one thing, which is, for me, lighting control. I really love that, and I really, really enjoy what I do. I think sort of in my mind, the next challenge is going to be maybe more on the business side of, wanting to advance my career into more of a leadership position, management position, managing more people and things like that. That's kind of where I would like to be headed. But with that balance, I gotta get my snowboarding time. So I'll say I just won't make it.
Maybe you can manage a snowboarding school.
Yeah, I know that would be. I could totally craft a fake career of managing a snowboard school that focuses on net zero sustainability.
Alyssa, do you think there's a specific turn in somebody's life where they begin to start to understand my generation is operating at a capacity in the work field right now that a lot of responsibility is falling on my generation, and it's now my duty, as well as the generation's duty, to take on that burden of the workforce for the rest of the world, right? Or for the for as representative of your own generation. And then there's a point where I'm going to operate in this capacity, and then there's a turn that's going to happen where it's going to be more about educating the next generation to make sure that they're ready and prepped take on the very role that you had taken. Do you think there's a turn that specifically happens in one's life where it's like, yeah, I'm good to I don't need to travel anymore, or I don't need to go to Patagonia, right? I thought I was going to go there. I always wanted to, but it's just not going to happen. I settled with going to British Columbia, right? Or something like that, right? Do you think there's a turn that happens?
I guess I'm sure it's different for everybody. I think that, for some people that might happen. I don't necessarily see that happening for myself. I think I hope I will continue to be, really curious and motivated and excited to continue exploring and traveling and, doing my best to advance my career and help advance the industry in certain ways and, all of that type of stuff. I think that motivation and that curiosity is really what drives me. And so I hope that I continue to have that well into my later years. But I do think that there is a time when, it is also time to start, looking back and really, reaching out the hand and pulling up others into roles or positions within careers, or, also in the fact of encouraging or, trying to help inspire people to do the things that you might like to do. I think it can be both. I feel like that's my answer to a lot of your questions. I'm like, it's both.
Well, no, the questions I ask are often long-winded and confusing, and I know that about myself. So I just hope of the things I say, one of them it lands. Yeah.
No, they're great questions. They're very, very thoughtful questions. No, it's very interesting. Yeah.
Well, Alyssa, really have enjoyed speaking with you. And I know we're coming up towards the end of the time here, so we want to be respectful of your time. Do you have any last questions for us?
No, I don't think so. This has been really fun. I was kind of nervous at first, so thank you for making this so enjoyable as a conversation and great questions.
And the concept is we're all, and you touched on it, and I'm glad, and that is people are in this industry and they are people, right? That's the kind of the concept, and we all run into problems. And James has said on the podcast prior, there's a lot of troubleshooting involved with lighting.
Yeah.
And you can be going in those weird hours, but you're working side by side with people, different types of people, right? People who are first year in the industry or 5 years in the industry. And there's something cool that kind of happens every single time, regardless if they're a 20-year vet or a 5-year person in there, or you're coming from the office, like you're an office person, or here comes the rep, or here comes the lighting designer. You know. They there's usually that jargon that goes back and forth and little jabs here and there. But at the end of the day, when the project is completed, there's a camaraderie there, and it's like this human element that kind of comes into play that is a beautiful thing. And everyone comes from very different walks of life. And I think it's found in construction and in more in construction than any other place. And you kind of touched on that a little bit, and it's appreciated.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Well, thank you, Alyssa. We appreciate you having you. It's been a delightful time, and hopefully we'll be able to speak with you again in another season.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Happy snowboarding.
It's starting to cool down. We're almost getting there.
Almost getting there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm counting down the days, so I can until it snows.
Alrighty, well, be safe, Alyssa, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you for your time. Thanks for listening. And if you could, please subscribe and share with your family and friends. Here's a sneak peek into next week's episode. You're at a bar and someone asks, what do you do? And you're responding, outreach coordinator. So do you tell them a story?
I'm an outreach coordinator for an electrical apprenticeship. And then they go, oh, so you tell people about opportunities in an apprenticeship, or if they don't get that, then that's what I tell them. And they go, oh, that's cool. That's really cool. So you're an electrician? Yeah, I'm a journeyman sound technician. Yeah, I sure am. Really? So you worked out in the field with all those guys? I sure did. And I didn't let them carry my ladder, even though they asked.
This podcast has been sponsored by ProCal Lighting.